their tips today. So today we are joined by Phase 1 OVC students who scored the highest in either the Casper or on the interview portions of their applications to OVC. So a round of applause for that, first of all. So today they're going to be giving us their tips and tricks and anything that helped them do well on these interview and Caspers. So the way that the event is going to work is that there's going to be two presentations for the interview portion, one from Faith and one from Alex, if you want to just wave. And then afterwards, there's going to be a Q&A section. So please hold your questions until the end. And then we're going to switch over to Casper, where we're going to have one of our OVC students who isn't here yet talk about the Casper. And then there's going to be another Q&A section for the Casper. So I'd like to invite Faith to come up.
Hi, everyone. Before we get started, I'll just tell you a little bit about me. My name is Faith. I'm Phase 1 with Stereo Wolf. I'm from Ottawa, and I completed my undergrad here in animal bio. I just graduated this past summer. And then on the screen are my lovely children who I miss very dearly because they're at home in Ottawa, except for the hissing cat. She's here with me, which is somewhat unfortunate. How do I change it? Oh, there we go. Okay, so to start off, what are the VPIs? The VPIs are the virtual personal interviews. They are the final phase in the OVC admissions process. So it accounts for 35% of your final combined admission score. And then the rest is kind of an average of everything else. So your grades, your BIF, your references, your Caspers. It's MMI style. So it's completely virtual. You'll enter into like a virtual room. You'll have 2 minutes to prepare a question or an answer to a question, and then you will present that question within a time frame, and then you repeat to another station with another question. It's essentially testing your non-academic attributes. So maturity, why you want to be a vet, everything that's on your BIF is relatively fair game. When it comes to preparing for the VPIs, I think first and foremost, it is really important to know your BIF. So your BIF is your background information form. For those who don't know, it's all of your previous experiences that you're logging your hours for in terms of vet med, in terms of other experience. And so when it comes to your BIF, obviously know what you did, but I think it's helpful if you can kind of speak on some experiences. What did you learn? What did you struggle with? What did you enjoy? Be able to elaborate on what you got out of your BIF. And then in relation to that, know your values and your interests. So your why of vet med, and then also knowing what your experiences like have taught you in terms of the industry, in terms of what being a vet looks like, in terms of yourself, like maybe why you love a certain thing in vet med. And then lastly, I'll say practice. It really does make a difference. I'm not saying like go crazy practicing or anything, but I think practicing can be really helpful because it is a virtual interview and it's something not a lot of us are familiar with. So practicing speaking into a camera, learning how to make eye contact with the camera, learning how to articulate a response within a time frame, learning how to appear confident in terms of body language. I think that can all be really helpful. And then also practicing a structure that you like to answer your questions. So if there's a specific format that you like to make sure you hit all the points you need to with the question within the appropriate time frame. So personally, for my practice experience, I went over my BIF a ton, and for each thing, like I said, I kind of created questions based off of my individual experiences, and I would like to choose like a specific story or experience that I felt really encapsulated the experience that I was listing on my BIF as a whole, so I could tell like a unique or personal case or story that I think made me connect a little bit more in terms of the interview. I also use Google a lot. Google's your best friend. I looked up basic interview questions in general. I looked up basic interview questions for vet schools. They have a lot of really helpful ones. Learning how to answer those questions, have kind of like a routine answer for the popular interview questions, and then being able to articulate it within the time frame. And then I practice my answer structure. So personally, I like to do basically like an essay format. I like to actually answer how I practiced answering for the Caspers, which we'll get to. But I would start with like an introduction, very general, and then like state my position. And then we would move on. Like I would give details on the experience, kind of go into it, explain it, relate it to myself and to the industry, and then come back with a conclusion summarizing my points. And then I also practice recording myself, which is a bit of a humbling experience, but it's definitely beneficial. Tips I wish I had known. The Caspers are really great practice, especially because for the Caspers, you're going to be having to talk to a camera as well. So I found that like learning how to speak into a camera was something I had already done when it came time for the interviews, and then also how to articulate yourself, how to consider all different aspects of a situation, and how to be able to answer questions fully in a time frame. And then finally, just be yourself. I think authenticity matters over perfection. We're all humans and we're all individuals and we all have a lot of unique things to bring. Like we're not just students. And so I think by being yourself, it's okay to be authentic and vulnerable and really share things with the admissions committee that make you stand out. My final advice is you guys have got this. Don't be too hard on yourself. The admissions interviews and the Caspers, they do make a difference, but they're definitely not the whole story. So try your best, but we're all allowed to make mistakes, and I don't think it's the end game if you don't do well on it. But yeah, try your best, be yourself. You guys got this. And we're going to do questions after, but if you guys have any questions about anything that I said specifically, you're free to email me. I'll try to get back to you as quickly as possible. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Faith. So we're going to invite Alexander now to come up. I think you can press the space bar.
Spacebar?
Maybe this one. I think the arrow.
The arrow works? Okay. Hi, I'm Alex. I'm going to tell you how I prepared for my vet school interview. So who am I? I'll just start with that. I'm from Stratford, Ontario. I did my undergrad here in animal biology, and I have 3 pets. That's Duck. He's a Great Dane who's only about 2 months old when I took that picture. And these are my cats, Bluebert and Lila. So my preparation strategies. So first, I looked up common veterinary school entrance interview questions, and this just helped me get a baseline of what might be asked on the interview, and it provided me a little bit of insight into what the interview might be like. And then I looked up like what good interview skills are for a great interview and helped me see where I could improve, such as eye contact, clear communication. You want to have a good tone so they can hear you. You don't want to go too fast, and you want to sound confident in all your answers. And you want to add intonation in your voice, so it's not just monotone, so it comes across a little bit better. And you want to make sure you're smiling at the appropriate times just to show, I guess, like you're being truthful with your answers. And you want to explain your answers by using examples and experiences, and this really helps strengthen your answers. And remove filler words like like, and as these like reduce your communication skills. And then I reviewed my BIF and I thought of experiences that I could go into depth with to help strengthen my answers. And it helped me generate potential questions that I thought might be asked on the interview. And finally, I practiced. I started very early so I could develop those communication skills as habits and let me think more about the questions rather than trying to have good communication skills on the interview. And I developed like a formula for my questions. So I introduced myself. I would thank the interviewers, and then I'd say that I was very excited to be there. And then I would say what I was going to be answering. So I did reinstate the question, and then they're kind of in multiple parts. So I'd say I'm going to answer this part first, and then answer it, and then the next part what I was going to answer, and go through it like that. And then finally, I'd thank the interviewers at the end. I'd also record myself. At first, I started just recording myself, just answering one question at a time, and then reviewing it and checking my communication skills and that my eye contact was good and all the other communication skills and seeing where I needed to improve. And then I could work on that the next time. And once I really improved, I started to do it in a test environment. So I would set up consecutive questions. I would put them on a timer. I think it's around 5 minutes you got to answer. Yeah. And then I would do it in the same room that I was going to plan to do the interview in. So for me, that was the kitchen. And then I wore my interview clothes just so I got used to them and I wasn't feeling uncomfortable. And I would review my recordings and I'd note again the areas where I thought I could improve. And I would also send those recordings to family and friends and get outside feedback on what they thought I could improve in. And I had a friend who was an interview coach, and she was able to make sure I was doing good habits and gave me feedback on where I could improve. And if you guys want to try, you could use Accepted Together, and there might be interview coaches on there that could really help. So my personal insights from the process, the questions are very personal. They're about you, your experiences and your passions, and like what started your journey towards becoming a veterinarian. So you really want to review your BIF and your experiences on it, and this will allow you to speak on it easily during the interview. And if you're passionate in an area, show your passion. It'll make you unique and really stand out. The timer goes by fast, so you definitely want to write down the points that you want to speak on. You'll get 2 minutes to write down, so you definitely want to write down those points so you can take a peek and see where you are and have a flow to the way you're answering. And each question has multiple parts to it, so really developing a formula and a roadmap for your answers, like introducing yourself, saying you're excited to be there, and explaining what you're going to answer. It really helps you sort of flow through that, and it helps the interviewer understand what you're talking about, so they kind of know where you're going with your answers. And communication is key. It's really hard to convey yourself over a camera, so you really want to maintain eye contact, have clear communication, intonation of voice, smiling. You really want to go into detail, remove the filler words, and be able to recover if you slip up. They know your nerves are going to be high, and they don't care if you make a mistake. Just make sure you can recover from it smoothly. Just say, I'm going to take a second, just take a break and recover, and then go back into it. And it really helps, and they won't reduce any marks or anything for that. And you want to have good posture. You want to make sure they can see you in the camera and you have good lighting and good posture. So tips I wish I had known when I started, that practicing to make good habits is really important. Focus on like those interview skills and the communication skills and make those habits so you can focus on answering the questions rather than trying to have good communication skills. And it allows you to fall back on these subconsciously. I remember the last question I was answering, it really threw me off, and being able to just think on the answer, and it really allowed me to answer it well. And I didn't even think about the communication skills. It really helped me get through that one. So practice in front of someone intimidating. So if you have somebody, like for me, it was my friend, just practicing in front of somebody was intimidating, and it made the interview less intimidating for me since I knew there was nobody on the direct end who could be like judging me. So it really made it less intimidating and the test environment a lot easier for me. The interviewers are not in your head, so you really want to explain what you're answering, have that roadmap and that formula, and repeat the question and paint the picture for them. Go into as much detail and depth as you can within the time frame, and really paint that picture for them so they can create that story and you can do better on the question. The interviewers want to see you succeed, so they're not there to pick you apart and make you fail. They know you're going to be stressed and that mistakes will be made. You just have to relax, go into it with a clear mind, and if you make a mistake, just recover and keep going. There's no right or wrong answer, so just be truthful and be yourself. Don't say what you want, what you think they want you to hear. They're going to see right through it, and you won't do as well. If you got to the interview stage, the OVC has seen something in you. They want to get to know you better, so use the interview as a way to express yourself and show how amazing you guys are. And if you guys have any questions, we're free to answer. And that's my email. You guys can email me if you have any questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I was curious, so you said that you did a lot of the interview practice with a professional coach. Is there any good coaching resources for that?
Can you see the slideshow?
Yep, I can.
I know there's one. My friend, my friend was actually on that one. It's Accepted Together. I think they have like medical students and vet students who got in, and they can you can look through and you can pick which one you want. And I do think they charge a fee, but it's definitely worth it if you are struggling with your interview and you really want to do well at it. It can definitely help.
I will say,
Well, I was
I mean,
just
I
wondering
didn't
what's the thing called? Like,
Oh,
what's
it's
the
Accepted Together.
website
That's
or?
the name of the website.
I'll
Oh,
also
okay.
say I didn't use an
Thank you.
interview coach, but I'm pretty sure BMO, who does like a lot of the Casper's prep, also does practice interviews for med school and vet school. So look into that if that's what you're interested in. I think a coach can be helpful. I didn't use one, but I hear BMO's good.
Yeah, so BMO or Accepted Together, the two we know.
Thank you.
I mean, I guess like similar to the Caspers, don't say anything like unethical. Like just be honest. Know the values of the school you're applying to, know the values that a good vet should have. Don't deviate from those. Don't say anything that's like incriminating. There's not a right answer. There's definitely not a right answer, but there are wrong answers. So.
Yeah, there's definitely things you shouldn't say that like controversial or.
Also, don't like if you lie about something on your BIF, like don't put experiences that you can't back up. Be able to back up all of your experiences. So like don't say anything that you don't have proof for because they can check if you're talking about something on your BIF. Yeah. Yeah.
How many was it?
I want to say we had 5 questions.
Minutes for each of those.
Yeah, so you get your question. I think you get like either you get like a minute to read it and then 2 minutes to prep, or you get like 2 minutes to read it and prep. You can jot down some notes and then you're presenting it for 5 minutes. And then do you get a break in between stations?
I'm not even sure. I don't even remember it. It flew by.
Like, I think you get a minute in between stations, maybe. You'd want to ask somebody else that though. It was a blur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stand out over.
Yeah, I like got pretty vulnerable with them. Like I told a pretty personal story, which I don't think you have to do by any means. But like by telling the personal story, I think they were able to find out a lot about me and like a lot about me not when it comes to vet med. Like obviously it's beneficial to talk about the things on your BIF, but you're more than just a student, you're more than just a future veterinarian. So I think maybe being able to talk about some other things that have happened in your life can be beneficial. And I felt as though that was like, it was a really personal answer, but you want them to see you as a person. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also talked about personal situations and experiences on it, and I think it helps the interview sort of build a connection with you as much as I can through the camera.
So it's gonna depend on the question. Like sometimes, like I volunteered at a wildlife sanctuary. So sometimes like I could talk about a very generic kind of story that happened at a wildlife sanctuary or about my experiences in general. And then like I also did VITA with Guelph. So I went to Guatemala and I always talked about like a specific, a specific case that we had. So like, I think it depends on the question, how specific you want to get, kind of the point you want to make. Like sometimes I'll do like a really specific case and like I'll say like, this dog was named this, and like I will talk about that very specific case. And sometimes I'll be like, yeah, well, like I work with raccoons a lot, and raccoons are kind of crazy. And so like this, like, does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult. You only have like a certain amount of time, the 5 minutes. You want to get into as much depth to give as much, I don't know, quality to your answer, but you don't want to go too in depth that you end up wasting all your time and you can't really answer the question.
So what was the second part of the question? I don't know if the person asking or reviewing your response is the person reading your BIF. I don't have an answer for that. I think that's one of the inner workings that we probably aren't given access to. I wouldn't be surprised if they had access to check it though, to confirm a story or confirm an experience. But I don't think that's something that we're given
No,
access to.
we don't really know. too much about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the earliest to apply, I assume, to OVC, but correct me if I'm wrong in the chat? And similar to that, when is the application process?
So the earliest that you can apply to OVC is in your third year. So you need to have completed 2 years of undergrad, and then you can apply starting your third year, which means you're gonna want to do the Caspers the summer of your second year. So you have to start relatively early. So the Caspers you have to complete before the application process even starts. So like, I think you can start in like spring and then it ends in like September, I think is the last date. And then when it comes to applications for OVC, I believe for domestic students, they roll out in December. Or no, they roll out in November, October, they're due in December for the first round. And then your BIFs are due like March.
I think so, something like that.
Yeah. And then interviews, we found out like June, early June, and then interviews, or no, we found out May and then interviews were mid-June, but that kind of changes every year a little bit. So yeah.
Someone is wondering if they look at first year.
Yes and no. So OVC takes your last
They
2
changed.
semester average, but they did just change it. So they take your past 4 semester averages. And then they take your application average. So your application averages, they'll say like, you need a biochem course, you need an anatomy course, you need a nutrition course, and you can pick and choose what courses you take to put on there. So like, if you're applying in third year, like, they might not necessarily care about your first year grades, but you can use one of your, or even fourth year, but you can use one of your first year grades if you did really well in it to count as a prereq. Like, I think I used like my first year, like, psych course as my like social studies credit, but like they didn't care that I did terribly in Chem 1 and Physics 1. So both, if that answers the question.
Or maybe things and research that's happening at OVC, that was why you wanted to go to stay with this.
I think knowing why you want to go to a certain university can be definitely beneficial. And I did during my prep look up like some stuff about OVC and had some stuff prepared on like why OVC is my dream school, why I really want to go to OVC, why I feel as though not only like I want to go there, but why I would be a good fit for the program. I think knowing that before you apply to any vet school is really beneficial. They also know that if you're domestic cohort, like this is your only option. And so like a lot of people want to go here because it's a vet school and it's here. But yeah, I think knowing OVC's values and then also like the values of the industry are helpful.
Someone is wondering what average would you say would help to get most people to the interview stage? And do online courses affect your applications?
So averages, we don't actually like know the admissions average each year. We like can kind of speculate. I can say like my cumulative average throughout undergrad was like an 88. And I did not great first and second year. I did a lot better third, fourth year. And then my admissions average was like a 90, but those are 91. But you can pick and choose the classes you put in there. So like that's expected to be higher. From who I've spoken to, that's pretty average. Some people are a little lower, some people are a little higher. Again, it has to like meet the cutoff to get you through the first stage. But then once you get through the first stage, which is your grades, like so many other things come into play that I think they make a really big difference. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, we don't really get to see the like class average. I know there are ones posted from previous years way before. They're a little bit higher, I think, than probably what they are now since they kind of made the waiting for the interview and the Casper a lot more. So I suspect it's a little bit lower than that, but I don't really have a,
I'll also say, I I think we're all kind of expecting it to change with the changes in the OBC like application process and rules and requirements. And so like I don't know how that's gonna affect you guys. In terms of online classes, if it's an online course with Guelph, like if you're taking like a DE course, then that would count. But then it also has to like fit into the semester rules. Although I also believe those are changing, so I don't really know. That would be a question for the admissions committee.
yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So one of the things that really helped me with this interview is I had already interviewed for 10 international schools. So it was like kind of the same thing all over again. I applied to 10, I got into 8. If you have any specific questions about the process, I can elaborate on that. You're also welcome to email me. There are definitely different classes that you have to take. And applications start a lot earlier in the year for international schools. So like if you want to go to an international school, you're looking at applying during the summer and not starting when OVC does, because OVC does start very late compared to other schools. Yeah. I would go for like what case stood out most to me. So like, was there something about it? Like, it might not have been the craziest case we had, but like there was something about it that meant something to me and that like taught me something. So I would go for something that like I felt was reflective of the experience as a whole. So like if I'm doing some sort of like community outreach program, what is one example I had that I felt as though I really made a difference and an impact in the community? And what did that teach me about vet med? Like, how did that make me realize, oh, I really love vet med. I want to be a vet. And how did that make me realize that I have skills to be in vet med?
Yeah, mine was kind of similar. I thought of experiences that had a big impact on me that lasted, like a long lasting impact, and sort of like what shaped me into wanting to go down this path. So experiences like that is what I would try to focus on.
Yeah. Um, I think diversity of experience helps on your application. So like showing that you understand various aspects of the industry. I definitely don't think it has to be all about experience. I mean, mine was mainly not bad experience. I had bad experience, but mine was mainly like I grew up with horses, and so it was horses, and then volunteering at a wildlife sanctuary. I did Vita. I don't think it has to be like anything like super outrageous. I think you can find touching stories in like the simplest of settings.
Yeah, I had like my like farming experience and experience with large animals and small animals, just kind of diverse experience, and I tried to draw from those.
And then, sorry, I'll just add on also experience, I think with people can be helpful. Animals are great, but that's not all that vet med is. And so I think showing that you have experience, not just working with animals, but working with people, and it can be working with people and animals, but like in a setting where you are actively communicating with people, I think is really beneficial to show that you understand both sides of the career.
I agree with that, yeah.
Um, so like I've always known what stream I wanted to do, but then like 50% of my friends have still no idea. I don't think it really matters. And I think a lot of people change their minds. I think it's like knowing what you enjoyed and being able to talk about the experiences you have had and then saying, I think I want to do this, but like, I don't know. I haven't worked with cows before, so maybe I like cows. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, you can be undecided in what you want to do, but as long as you show your passion and yeah.
Yeah. Not as far as I know. I know like we have a lot of people in our class from Guelph, but I think a lot of us go to Guelph hoping to apply. So I think that's why I know we have like a lot of people from other schools. I think as long as it's like an accredited school that you can get your prereqs at, I don't really think it matters.
And then the next one is, what year did you apply for international schools? And did you have a specific reason for doing so?
So I applied for international schools in my 4th year of undergrad, which is also when I applied to OVC for the first time. And I applied to international schools because I didn't want to wait to get into vet school. And OVC, you definitely, I mean, I had already interviewed for most of the international schools by the time I even started my application for OVC. It's definitely later in the process. And I said I was going to vet school no matter what. I didn't want to wait. And so that was a personal preference. I am fortunate that I'm financially stable enough that international schools are a possibility for me. But I also know a lot of people who they'll do their OVC application cycle, and if they don't get in the first time, then the next year they might apply to international schools alongside their secondary OVC application. So
Is finding an interview.
I can't speak on that really. But I do think that like I know BMO has a lot of vet prep questions. So I would imagine that BMO has an area on there where you can request like to schedule a meeting with an interview coach.
I've heard good things about Accepted Together too. I know they have a few coaches on there from med schools and vet schools, so try looking at either BMO or Accepted Together, or just you can probably Google it, and there might be other websites too.
Also, if you guys are doing like the mentorship society, I know like I have a mentee. Us mentors will go over interview prep with you as well, if that's something you're wanting to do. And I know that FDC also does interview prep. So there are a lot of resources out there. It's gonna be okay, I promise.
Do you consider what made you decide to wait until you're?
I did consider it. I almost did it. I felt like I was relatively ready. Personally, I wanted to complete my undergrad, and like that was the main thing. I didn't have all the credits I needed to complete it 3rd year, and I really wanted to complete it because I had already put 3 years towards it at that point. I do know that a lot of OVC students do complete their undergrad and get their bachelor's during the summer. So that's also an option if you do want to apply your 3rd year, you can definitely complete it. I just personally was like, I'm gonna enjoy my undergrad, I'm gonna get it over with, and then that way, if for some reason something happens and vet school doesn't go my way, then I have my undergrad to fall back on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Are you guys gonna stay for the rest of the event? Okay, perfect. So now we're gonna be moving on to the Casper portion of our event, and I'm going to invite Laura to the front to speak. I think I did get it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Laura, and I'm also a Phase 1 DVM student, and I'll just be going over some Casper tips. So who am I? I'm actually not from Guelph, so if you guys have any like U of Guelph questions, probably best to ask them, because I didn't go here for my undergrad. I actually studied in the University of Prince Edward Island. So I was actually in the pre-vet program there. And yeah, so that's kind of where I'm from. So I thought it would be helpful just to kind of walk through how I prepared for the Casper, just because if you're interested in getting like tips of like how to speak or what the test is looking like, you can kind of just do that on your own. So I thought it'd be helpful if I actually walked through how I did it. And obviously, just to kind of reiterate, I guess, Casper is kind of unique in that it's so different how people study for it. Some people, like when I was preparing for it, I asked like obviously a variety of different people how they went about it. And some people didn't study at all. Some people studied a little bit and some people studied a lot. So it just depends on what type of person you are and how comfortable you are with it. I personally knew that I'd feel like more confident in my answers knowing that I prepared a little bit for it. So yeah. And like take it all with like a grain of salt. Like just do whatever works for you. And if you notice something that stands out, like just try it. So the first thing I did was kind of just like study up on what is the Casper, how do they judge my answers, what are they looking for? And this is kind of what I found. Casper has no direct rubric of what they're assessing your answer on. That's what kind of makes it hard to study for. It's not like it's a black and white answer. However, I did find that using these qualities, which I found online, as a foundation for my answers while practicing for the test was really helpful. I just kind of used it as a jumping off for how to build my answers. I didn't necessarily use them all per se on the actual test, but what I did was I made a whole Google Doc and I made definitions for all of these different qualities. And then I also made like practice scenarios where I exemplified these. So it just kind of helped me per se, because there are personal questions on the test, and just having a list of like 10 different scenarios where I actually have these various like I practice these skills, I could immediately think of like, okay, I know a scenario exactly that kind of matches this question. Because obviously when you're in the test and they ask you, when did you practice like teamwork, it can be like easy to draw a blank. And so just going through and making up like, matching like different qualities of when I exemplified the skill, I immediately had like 10 different scenarios in my head of where I exemplified it. So it just kind of helped. So that's the first thing I did. The second thing was just look at the different type of questions. These are kind of like, obviously you can find some of your own resources online doing your research, but these are the main ones, like situational questions, where they'll give you a situation and you have to kind of look at, oh, like you're in a work, like you're doing a team project and someone's not doing your work, like those kind of questions. And then reform questions, personal questions, which I mentioned before, behavioral questions, which I also mentioned before, and like big picture questions. So just like going off of this Google Doc that I made, I also kind of came up with some scenarios for these kind of questions just to kind of practice being able to answer questions, because obviously it's easy to draw a blank when you're actually doing the test. And so just having some scenarios in the back of your head that you kind of already practice and you can pull from, it was super helpful for me. The next thing I did was practice. This is kind of tricky because you don't want to practice to the extent where your answers are starting to feel ungenuine. You don't want them to feel super like type A, like this, and this. Obviously, when you're like doing your research on like how to answer a Casper test practice questions, they'll have like start with acknowledging the scenario, start with addressing the different people, start with this. And obviously that's a super good jumping off point, but you don't want to practice to the point where all of your answers are looking the exact same. Just because I feel like you have to also look at it from the perspective of the judges, and they're going through so many tests. You want yours to be a little bit different and be a little bit more unique. And so just make sure you're not over practicing basically, which can be tricky. But yeah, so I practiced this website was super helpful. I noted different perspectives and roles, which I think is important when answering different questions. And then I also practiced speaking and verbally answering questions, just because I know that can be hard, especially in a timely manner. That's like, I found that was really tricky, just because obviously when you're speaking, you just kind of elaborate and you take some time to think, and you might say like a lot. And so just making sure your answers are super concise is a good way to practice too. And then lastly, the last thing I did to practice was actually take the practice test on the Casper website. It's super helpful. It's basically the Casper test, just in a practice way. And that was like the big game changer. It just kind of helped me reaffirm, okay, I'm ready to take this. I'm super confident. And yeah, so that was the last thing I did. Just some final notes. For the video portion, it's kind of like an interview, so just try and make eye contact with your computer. It can be kind of awkward, but it just kind of helps make it more personal than you just kind of staring at the ground or staring at the ceiling. I know this stuff is kind of obvious, but and then also just try and dress presentable, speak clearly. For the written portion, don't focus super on grammar and complete sentences because you may run out of time, and that's totally okay. Like I found that when I was doing it, I'd be mid-sentence and then my time would be up and it would like take that question away, and that's okay. Don't worry about it. Just try and move on to the next question. And try and answer a little bit of each question. So for example, on the written portion, you might have a video and then you're given 3 questions on the video. Instead of just focusing all of your energy on one of the questions, try and answer a little bit of each of them, just because every question is kind of individual. And so if you're only focusing on one, then they're just going to give you a 0 for the other 2. So just try and answer everyone. And just to wrap up, at the end of the day, I think the main thing is just to remain calm, make sure to write out your thought process and reasoning and motivations, and ultimately your why on why you're answering a scenario that in the way that you chose to answer it. Because like I said, there's no like black or white. They can't just mark you wrong. As long as you're explaining why you feel a certain way, why you chose to answer a question the certain way, then they're going to give you some kind of marks. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. That's my email. And yeah, any questions or anything? Yeah. Yes. So basically how the Casper is designed, and obviously you can research this on your own too, there's 2 portions to it. So there's the video portion and the written portion. I can't remember the exact number of questions that are in each, but they're both timed. So for the video portion, you'll probably get like 30 seconds to read over a question. So it might be like, it'll give you a video, it'll play out the video, it might be like a scenario, and then it'll give you like I can't remember the exact time, but it'll give you like 10 seconds to read the question, 30 seconds to kind of like take a breath, write out like how you might answer the question, and then it'll give you like a minute, I believe, to actually give your answer. And then for the written portion, it's kind of similar. They'll give you a video or something, and then they'll give you time to read the question. Actually, no, they don't give you time to read the questions with the written. It's just all pops up on like the screen, and then you just go about answering. So it's a little different. But if you're looking for like how to prep for the timing, the practice questions that the Casper test on that website, it walks you through the entire test and how they're going to like display the questions, how many time, like, because they give you a little bit of time between the written and the video as well to kind of give you a break. So it'll like show you how everything's timed. Yeah, no worries. Yeah.
It's not the point of it not being enough time so that you're authentic and you're not having time to like prep and think through like what they want me to answer. So like you just do an answer and like you're not always going to have time to really think through your answers in real life ethical scenarios. So you do your best to answer each part. Grammar out the window, completing sentences out the window, that's okay. We all have, like, everybody says the same thing that you do not have enough time to answer. So the judges, like, the people assessing it know that.
Mm-hmm. Just for those online, I don't know if you heard, but basically, just be prepared that you're not going to finish writing and like you're going to run out of time, and that's totally okay. Yes. Sort of. It's kind of hard, but yes, I kind of did create like a skeleton for myself. You can find a bunch online, but try and come up with your own too. Just because again, you want to remain kind of unique. But yes, the one I kind of used was, I guess it depends on the scenario too, but I made sure to kind of remain unbiased. That was a big thing, and just addressing the scenario. And then making sure I address the different perspectives and how they might, like, where they might be coming from. And then I went into saying, however, this is my role, and then proceed to kind of do it that way. You just want to make sure and that you're also explaining your motivations and why you might be doing that, and kind of create like a concluding sentence, kind of summing it up. And yeah, but yeah, you'll figure it out, how to come up with your own. And then there's also, I made different skeletons for different questions, like these ones. I made different skeletons for each of the different questions as well, which I found helped. Yeah. Yes. Like, sorry, so like you're asking, like, did I see any questions where it was asking me to like transfer this over to like becoming a veterinarian? Or Mhm.
Like, say that, like, after you answer the question, like, is at the end or responding at the end, or something on how you can apply that in a future career? I've heard that would be beneficial. Do you ever do that in your?
Yes and no. I think that that's a good point to make sure that in your concluding sentence, maybe in your skeleton, to include how you might use this in your future. But then again, you are short on time too. So I think it is important to be able to say, okay, yeah, in the future, I might, go about it this way, but maybe it's also important to, instead of adding that last sentence, to build onto your motivations, maybe. So give or take, but yeah, I think that's a good thing to add too. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In terms of like basic interview questions, like what are your biggest strengths? Tell me about a time when you struggled with something. Like questions like that, like if you could have a superpower, what would it be? Like random questions like that about you are very good with Caspers. And with ones like that, I would relate it. So,
Mhm.
well, personally, I related it to vet. So like when it's talking about your greatest weakness, you could say, but learning how to overcome this has helped me with veterinary greatest strength, but I know that this is going to be an asset for my future career as a veterinarian. Like you can tack that on at the end, but unless the question is specifically asking about your future career aspirations, you have so little time that it would be like a sentence at the end, it wouldn't be anything more.
Yeah, and that's a good point. If it's like, I know I can think of a question where, because obviously there was a personal question on the test, and it is, I think it valuable in explaining how that experience, like if it's a time you struggled or a time you overcame something and how you grew from it, is really important in the personal questions, but maybe less so in the other ones. Like, yeah. Yeah.
And if so, did you make sure they were at least all partially answered? And what would you focus on as like a must-have in your answers?
Okay. So yes, I guess long story short, I for sure left a lot of questions and sentences unfinished, just because I like it's way too fast. Like you barely have any time to read the questions and process your thoughts, let alone answer them. So there were many sentences I left unfinished. Some questions I was like, ugh, like I didn't even really answer the question there. But you just like, I feel like the biggest thing is to not let that drag you down and not to dwell on the past questions because it is so quick and you're moving along. So just try and take a breath because you do get like a gap between questions, just to kind of chill, try and breathe, and then just move on and try and answer the next questions to the best of your ability. So yes, I did leave questions unanswered. Yes, my grammar was horrible. But as long as they can kind of get a general idea of what you're trying to say, I think that that's good. Obviously, you don't want to be like really misspelling everything because then they're not going to be able to understand what you're saying, but just try and answer the questions to the best of your ability. And what was the last part of that question? It was asking about for all the questions. A must-have is tricky because all of the questions are pretty different. Like for a personal question, it might be like talking about name a time you overcame something, whereas a situational question might be like how would you handle the situation? So they're pretty different must-haves, but generally I would say explaining your motivations and trying to remain unbiased and figuring out what your role is specifically in certain scenarios is important. But yeah, I would say it depends on the question. Yeah, I know that doesn't really totally answer it, but yeah. Yeah, it also I find that like when you ask about the Casper, it's really tricky because everyone is so different. But I think that it's totally up to you. I probably started studying like 3 weeks in advance. But I didn't do like a whole lot of studying every single night kind of thing. It was just like on and off. I would like personally for me, it took me probably a week to build the Google Doc with the different motivations and the stuff there. Like I don't know, like partially of a week to go over the type of questions and then like another week of just practicing. So it depends on the person, but I'd say maybe 3 weeks-ish, give or take, a couple weeks. Yeah. Obviously you don't want to get to the point where you're over practicing, like I said, because then your answers can be kind of ungenuine. So you just want to make sure you're not over practicing. So just, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Pretty much what you're saying, but I also, like major prioritize, like not all of it was Casper's prep, it was like speaking into a camera prep. It was a big thing for me is like, I have my typing speed, like I was practicing typing because I was typing with 2 fingers and I was like, I'm not even gonna get a sentence in. So like I learned how to type with all of my fingers, which is a really good skill, I highly recommend. But like that's something you can start doing now. Not that you have to, but like it was like that sort of thing. It wasn't necessarily Casper's questions, because I do agree that I think you can over prepare for it, that you sound a little bit disingenuous.
Yeah. And just like also just getting familiar with the time thing, I think is also a big deal. Just because you don't realize how limited time you have until you start to practice. So just kind of getting that into. No, I don't think so. I was talking to a few people in my class and I know someone that got second quartile and still got in. So I heard that and I didn't know if that was real. Okay. Okay, sick. So there, yeah. Okay, so for those ones. Yeah, no, I agree. So yeah, for those online, I don't know if you can hear if they're not holding a mic, but yes, someone who got first quartile did get in. So it's completely possible. So you don't stress overly. Obviously the Casper is just a percent of what they're looking at for your application. They're also going to be looking at your averages, your experience, your BIF, your interview. Like there's so many different parts of this application. So don't stress too much about the Casper. Obviously, at the end of the day, if you once you do your, if you get the vet school interview, which I hope everyone does, like it is those slight differences that might get you in compared to everyone else, just because once that interview is done, like everyone is so similar on the playing field. So obviously it is important, but don't stress too much because it is completely possible to get in with the first.
Like, we don't know our actual Casper score, we just know how we compare to other people writing it that day. So like, if you were writing it on a day where like all of the medical school students are writing it, who like really have to do well to get in, then like you might be a lower quartile, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you did any worse than somebody with a higher quartile. It's very much compared to the people on the day that you wrote it. So like the higher quartile score, the better, but like it doesn't necessarily mean that like you got like 5% on it, or we got like 95%. Like we don't know how we did, we just know how we compared to others.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is like valuable information, but I wrote mine like the first or second week of December. I think it was like December 6th. Yeah. Some people write it in the summer just to get it over with. I wrote it in December. Yeah, depends on the person. Yeah. I don't think so, because it's like how it works is like you'll go onto the Casper site and you'll type in like, oh, like I'm applying through Guelph, like Ontario Vet College, I'm a domestic student, and then I'll give you a list of all of the days you can take it. And so it's not like you can just randomly sign up one day and say, I'm going to take the Casper today at this time. You have to look and make sure it matches with the school you're applying to. And it's the same thing with like international schools too, I believe. So yes, you have to do it through the website. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Did that answer your question? No. I think yeah. So sorry. Yes. So once you sign up, I believe you can only do it once, and that's the time slot that it's like selected through your school, and then it automatically sends your results to the school. And so I don't think you can do it twice. I think yeah. Mhm.
It's, it's up. It's September for you, I do mine in August, and then the last date to write it is in September to.
February, I think.
The applications for OBC start around then. I think the first form would be December and then MIFs due like after that. So you can write it once per application cycle. I do know some international schools require it as well, and they do have different dates than what is offered in Canada. I do not know how to write it if that is the case. That is something that you want to email individual schools about.
Yeah, and your Casper only lasts, I believe, a year. And so say if you like, you tried to get in this year and just didn't work out, you'd have to retake the Casper, which kind of sucks, like if you did decent, but yeah, just heads up for that. Yeah.
Is there anything you did that
I think that the main thing I did maybe like I think when it like your chance to shine, I guess you could say, comes down to your personal questions. I think that I used like pretty unique scenarios for those, but also something else to know with the Casper that's kind of unique is it's kind of similar to the vet school interview where every question that you do is being judged by someone different. And so say you do really, really bad on a question and you're like, oh, like this is gonna tank my entire thing. It won't. Someone else, like every question that you submit is being graded by someone different. So that can be super helpful to know. But for the other questions, I don't know actually, like trying to think of anything unique that I did. It's hard to obviously answer like generic questions, like asking you like, oh, you work in a group of people, like someone's not doing their work. What are you going to do? Like, obviously, when it comes down to those questions, it's hard to be unique in those scenarios. But I think that maybe something that made me stick out was just how I kind of addressed all of the different perspectives, made sure to take those into account by forming my answer. Might have been unique, but do you guys have anything else to add to that? Like that was unique for you guys?
Like, there are these questions and like you actually have to admit it. It's like you're not the boss. You're not in a position where you know the laws in the situation. And you can say like, I'm unfamiliar with this, but like, I don't know this and that's okay. Here's what I'm going to do to know this, or like, here's my plan of how I'm going to get in contact with somebody that knows this.
Mhm.
Like, they're not looking for perfect, and I think kind of acknowledging that you have some of that like imperfection, but that you're willing to work to find the answer makes a difference.
Yeah, and I think that like acknowledging your role. So like say in a certain scenario, you're the like cashier at this place, acknowledging that, okay, I'm the cashier, I'm not the manager. I think that can also be good. So because maybe some people like when they jump into a Casper question, they're just like all ready to like, take over and like dominate the situation. But I think it's okay to elaborate, like you said, to just admit when, you might be restricted in a certain role as well.
Same thing goes for the VPIs, admit when you don't know, like that is okay, and I think if anything, acknowledging areas where you may struggle is the strength.
Mhm. For sure. Anything else? No? Perfect.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. That is the end of our presentation. So if you have questions, please feel free to email them or email FBC and we can get you in contact with them. And for our OPC students, we have little gifts for you. Yeah. Okay, thanks everyone for coming.